Hi, Phil Kavanagh again. In this episode, we'll look at issues with the engine and why I've removed it completely and for good, and also look at putting up the tent, or part of putting up the tent. So hope you enjoy it. I cleaned out the loose rubbish from inside the boat to get a good look at the engine. It's a 10 horsepower GNMN condenser diesel and has a date stamp of 1982. The condenser diesel, if you haven't seen one, has a very small fan-cooled radiator as part of a closed cooling system and just manages to keep the engine cool enough by condensing steam from the cooling water as it passes through the radiator. This type of engine is usually to be found in Asia, fitted to small handheld cultivators. For a bit of fun, the link in the description will take you to cultivator racing in Thailand using this type of engine. It's good for a laugh. On this engine, a crazy looking lay shaft has been added, driving an alternator, a pump for exhaust system cooling, and a larger bilge pump with a clutch. The size of this bilge pump is an indicator that this was a pretty leaky boat. To marinise the engine, a system for adding water to the exhaust has been fitted in the form of a big steel manifold, and the air filter has been moved closer to the engine as well. The engine and separate gearbox were fitted to a large and quite heavy steel frame, which had become rusty and affected a couple of the floors as well as the engine beds. I suppose you'd call it some sort of rusty dry rot. All this has happened despite the fact that the engine-boat combination never made it to the water, except for being open to rainwater for 10 years or so. The engine was also fitted about 900mm aft of the position of the original engine. So I think I might have to draw this boat up and have a look at the centre of flotation versus the centre of gravity and just see where it would be best to put the engine. One thing I've noticed from all the old photos I've seen is that the aft end of the boat seems to be floating about 100mm or so higher than it looks like it should. So there is a waterline marked on the boat, but it's questionable whether the boat will sit on that waterline, especially when you consider that the new engine is heavier and the fuel and water tanks are larger, and both are now under the aft deck. All these are good reasons to draw it up and do some calculations. The hours on the GNMN engine would be very low, but because of extended years of no use, one of the valves is jammed in the open position and will have to be freed before the engine can be run again. Well, there's engine ready to go out. I think. All I need's a crane, huh? For a boat this size, I think this Chinese engine is a bit small at 10 horsepower, and the thought of going backwards in a 40-knot headwind doesn't make me feel very happy. When I decided to buy Jabiru, it had no propeller. However, the lady I bought it from assured me that the prop was in the shed somewhere, and she would find it for me before I came to pick up the boat. True to her word, the prop was included when I took possession. I was very surprised to see it is left-hand rotation when facing forward, but most engine gearbox combinations are right-hand. Given the shaft is 900mm too short, if the engine is put in the original position, and the prop is left-hand rotation, Both will have to be renewed. I will be selling the engine, gearbox, shaft and prop in the coming months, so if you're interested, let me know and we can talk about it. It would be a good cheap combination for a slightly smaller boat. I have bought a second-hand D35-2 BMW marine diesel as a replacement, but I think that's a better story for later. The next step was to find a suitable cover to house the boat while the work goes on. I bought a Nissan hut style of tent. It's 12 metres long and 9 metres wide, so it's very roomy for a boat this size. It took about a week to set up and pour the temporary concrete anchor points, and then a few more days and a few friends to set up the frame and pull the cover over. It took another day or so after that to tension the skin, which is all laced on with rope, and is also helped by 2 rows of ratchet straps down each side. To enable access to fastenings in the top of the tent, I joined the 2 parts of a large ladder to make an A-frame to make the tent erection possible while the boat was in place. However, to be able to move the A-frame ladder along over the boat, it was necessary to remove the old rotten cabin. That was always going to happen, but it was a good job for a chainsaw. I've included some aerial shots in this episode, just so you can see the boat from a different viewpoint. It's for my benefit as well, because once the tent's over it, I won't get to see it either. So I hope you enjoy this. Well, now the tent's complete and Jabiru is snug and out of the weather. It can only get better from here onwards. Well, that's all there is for episode 3. Next time we'll look at clearing out the inside of the boat more so that I can start to tighten up all the fastenings, which is sorely needed. So I'll do that. And also I thought I'd include in this shot the left-hand propeller that we talked about, just so you know that it does exist. So see you next time. Bye.